Welcome to the gallery talk of Carol Chappell and Vicky Hollenbeck. I gave it a title with such an unusual word that I don't remember it from the top of my head, but it was about viewing differently, and that is what I think these two artists do. They look differently, between the two. One looks very close, microscopic. The other one looks very close and strange. And I'm going to have them explain what that is all about. There's work in the Corrine Woodman 1 and there's work in the Corrine Woodman 2. If you have any questions, just stick up your hand, and you know the drill, I think. Okay. Carol, since you have the mic in your hand, what's your background and how did you become an artist?
I don't think I ever wanted to be anything but from the time I was a little kid. And then when I went to college, I studied art. I was a painting major, printmaking minor. And it went from there. I took about a 25-year detour and had a sign company. And so I painted signs, did graphic design, advertising, and that kind of thing. And then once I didn't need to have that income because my son had grown up, I went back to the more sketchy income of being a fine artist. Is that good?
Yeah.
That's enough? Okay.
And Vicky, the same question. Tell us a little bit about your background. Carol was an artist always. Were you an artist always, and how did you, or not, and how did you get there?
Okay, sure. Well, I'll speak to photography first. Like many photographers, I was given a camera as a child and just fell in love with it. Always wanted to make photographs that I saw in magazines such as National Geographic and that type of thing. And my formal education in photography came in bits and starts. I took a photography class in high school, and I absolutely hated the technical part of photography. I wanted to make beautiful pictures. So I wasn't quite mature enough to realize that it's work. So a couple decades later, I really wanted to go back to making photographs, and I took a couple of courses at Lynn Benton Community College. Rich Bergman and Kurt Norlin were my instructors there. And at that time, I really embraced everything about it, darkroom work, et cetera. And from there, I found workshops and things like that to continue my education, learning more about art in itself from self-education, taking a class here and there. My formal degrees are in biology. And I also feel like working in the world of science, my career as a lab technician, those two worlds are very connected. I find scientific thinking isn't all that different from artistic thinking. There's a certain amount of creativity that goes on between both. What else? Does that cover it?
Carol probably answers, if somebody says, well, what do you do? She would probably say, I'm an artist.
Right.
And right. And what would you say?
Well, I would say that art is not my vocation, it's my avocation. and I love that about it, because I feel free to create when I want to, and not be consumed with, I have to make a living at this. But I do feel a certain compulsion to do it, and that gives me balance in life. And I, especially, I pay a lot of attention to politics and things that are going on in the world, and I feel like there's so much destructive forces, that I'm compelled to do something creative and constructive.
You mentioned, I will address photography first. Is there another medium that you work in?
I have done music, if you want to call that an art. Not really composing. Yeah, some people are splitters. So, and that I think goes along with my abstract work too, is I really like jazz music, and have played a bit of jazz music. Piano is the instrument that I play. So I would consider that part of my artistic being as well.
So Carol, you mentioned you had a major in painting and a minor in printing. So the printing is closer to what you had as your bread and butter job for a number of years. But what's your passion now? Now that you can do what you want? Or do you?
Do you mean between painting and printmaking?
Yeah, still painting and, or do you now do embroidery?
I don't do embroidery. I'm not good at that. Whatever kind of comes through my life is what my subject matter is at that moment. And then whatever application I think is appropriate to express that. So I've narrowed it down to 3 things mostly, and that would be drawing, printmaking, and painting. And so whatever seems to be appropriate, those are the 3 things that I do. Is that right? Does that answer the question? Yeah. I wanted to go back to one other thing, though, that you said before about if somebody asks you what you are. Yeah. I personally wouldn't say an artist. I think that is a very strong term, and it is just so precious. It would stick in my throat. I couldn't say that. I say I'm a painter and a printmaker. That's just a little aside there that we could talk about all afternoon. We shouldn't.
So I assumed something that I shouldn't have, but could you explain to us what the difference is between a painter and an artist? How you feel that difference is? Why can you say I'm a painter and a printmaker, but not I'm an artist?
I think the term artist elevates it to a position that I wouldn't be comfortable appropriating to myself. I might say that you were one.
So you're not at the school that says everybody is an artist?
No, I don't think so. I don't think so.
Would you say, could we say everybody's creative?
Oh, sure. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And maybe everybody has the potential to be an artist. I'm just saying I wouldn't say it of myself.
And that's because, why? And I'm just genuinely surprised.
Because I just think it's a very precious term that I wouldn't apply to myself.
Because we have people in this show asking us the difference between a professional and a non-professional artist, and that is really hard to explain. And I think it might be similar to what you're alluding to.
I agree with you. I think that between a professional and a non-professional, I think is the terms on this show, I think that's self-assigned. Yes. Do you feel professional or do you not feel professional? And then I'll accept whichever anyone wants to say about that. Well, we got off on this, didn't we?
Because you wouldn't like that, would you? So for this particular exhibit, you have selected work that is very specific. It's a very specific body of work. Can you tell us a little bit about this body of work and how you got to it?
Yeah.
And why is it printing? Because you said that is connected to the subject matter a little bit. Okay.
Okay, I'll see where I can begin with this one. These particular prints, I think, started with that microbiome show that was here at the Art Center. At that same time, some other things converged personally. One was I was looking for a vehicle to do some more abstract painting. Generally my work is pretty figurative. And I just had a need to do some abstract, and this was a vehicle. The microbiome show was a vehicle for that. Also, I have a couple of microscopes at home, or in the studio, and I really enjoy looking at things, and I'm not a scientist. I'm clueless about what I'm looking at. But for that show, there was the opportunity to go up to the microbiology department at OSU and have Petri dishes and put something in there and watch it grow and then look at it. I thought that was all just very exciting, since I'm not a scientist and I don't do it daily. And from that came these images, and they are the same size as a Petri dish. But then through looking at things through the microscopes, and then also looking at things through telescopes, boy, in nature, it's all the same. I mean, those patterns are repeated from the tiniest little thing you can't see to this great big planet or whatever that you can see, or a drop of water or whatever. I mean, it's just nature repeats these patterns over and over and over. So that was my fascination, and it seemed like I like doing collagraphs, I like doing printmaking, and so.
So tell us quickly what a collagraph is.
Okay, I brought some plates. There are 2 plates in that small gallery there in the front. A collagraph is kind of like collage that you print. That's quick. That's the quick answer. You can have anything for your plate. On these, I used just poster board or mat board. And then you put things on there, or you can cut things off of there.
So you create a relief.
You do, a very shallow relief. And then you seal it so that the ink won't penetrate that and water won't affect it. And then you ink it. You have to have an etching press. It's a method that you really need a press. The paper's damp when you print it. Run it through the press, and that's it. Presto. That's right.
Well, Vicky, the word abstract fell, and you are photographing existing objects, and photography is not the first medium you think of when you think of abstraction. So tell us a little bit how that came about for you.
Okay. You're right. A lot of photography is, I guess you call it representative. It wants to show something exactly how you would see it with your eyes. I guess it's a little bit my nature to see things that are not that way. And I was thinking about that this morning. Where did that come from? And I kind of remembered those highlights books that they had when we were kids in doctors' offices and things like that. And I remember, where is this object or what does it belong? And I thought, well, maybe that has something to do with it. I'm not really sure if that's where it comes from, but it's interesting that I've realized over the past few years that if I, like you said, you wanted to create some abstract work, if I go out with that mindset, I want to make an abstract photo, it doesn't work for me. So the things that I've captured are usually things that I'm out with my camera and I just happen to see this pattern, this strange pattern. One of a classic example is the work I call seismic. And there was just water swirling around this drain, and the reflection of a gate in this swirling water created these ripples, and it just drew my eye, and I just had to take that photo. So that's my process with making abstracts. Like I said, if I go out and say, I want to make an abstract photo, and I try, it's usually a failure. So it's things that my mind just sort of picks up on when I'm out doing other
So
types
what
of
made
photography.
what made you pick out these photos that you made and say, this is a body of work that I'm going to call the things something different than they really are? How did that happen?
Just sort of, I guess I'd call it organically with the passage of time and having this collection. They were sort of oddballs. I do other genres of photography, portrait photography, a little bit of street photography. So a lot of my photos are people focused, but here and there I would have these things that would crop up that would be these abstracts, and they sort of sat around, and I said, you know, they keep coming up, and I think I have a collection here. So I didn't set out, maybe as Carol did, to form a collection of the work. They sort of just emerged.
Mm-hmm. So when you make a photograph and you see something like that water and the reflection, you're no longer thinking, oh, that could go in my abstracts.
It's evolving towards that now that I have, a critical mass of these types of photos. But originally, no, it was just kind of there. That's kind of a neat thing that came out of my photo walk.
So how is it to have these two different sides? You're saying your other work is more people-oriented, mm-hmm. and these things are not.
Right. It's bothersome sometimes because people want you to define yourself as either a portrait photographer or even, talking about professional versus non-professional, artistic photographer versus commercial photographer. Those are maybe a little bit easier to draw the line, but I'm really hesitant to say I'm a portrait photographer or I'm an abstract photographer. So it bothers me a little bit that I can't really fit myself into a box in that way. But on the other hand, I don't care too much about it, and then I'm free to just do what I want.
So Carol, do you feel that you are in a box?
No.
And so for you, these two bodies of, or I don't know how many bodies of, I think you have multiple bodies of work, but this abstract work and your more figurative work, how are they connected? Or are they?
Yeah, I don't think there's a difference at all. You work with the same elements. Whether you're doing something that's figurative or you're doing something abstract, it's color, contrast, composition. It's the same. I don't really see a difference.
So where did your desire of wanting to do abstract work come from?
I think it might have just been a little bit freeing at that time. I thought, well, maybe I'll just push the paint around. And rather than trying to say anything about something, because I do try to say something about something rather than just reproduce something. So I think that was it. I think it was just, oh, yeah, I haven't done any abstract.
What were your challenges in this pushing the paint around?
It's just the same as if I were doing a portrait of somebody. It's just knowing when it's finished, knowing if you've achieved the composition that you want. Often, I think the paint sort of, you jump on that train and see where it goes, and sometimes it ends up at a different depot.
Sometimes it goes off the rails.
Oh, we hope not.
So what were specific challenges of this body of work? You set yourself sort of a parameter of, I'm going to work in the round or in a circle, and I'm going to do a color graph. So were there specific challenges, or how was your process of, how did you make your plate?
Yeah, pretty much the same way I would do a painting. I did do a series of paintings called Petri Dish or Planet too. Same thing, but you're manipulating smaller pieces and moving them around and seeing if that composition is going to work that way. It's not nearly as random as it appears. And then sometimes it's more random than it appears, I guess. But yeah, if I'm not happy with it, I'm not going to do it. Or I make the adjustments that I need to make. But it's the same way with painting. It's just that these are really tiny.
When did you move from painting to printing for this body of work?
Well, I do have paintings, so I didn't really. Sometimes I just like to break it up and do prints for a while. I really like printmaking. But then I'll do it for a while and think, geez, I really would like to do something in color and big.
What's the fun in printmaking?
Oh, I like seeing all those copies of something that I did. That's the truth. Yeah, and I like the process. I mean, it's kind of physical. You have a press, you have to do this, you have to do that. Yeah.
Do you get covered in ink, or?
Do I get covered in ink? Yes.
Yeah.
Uh-huh, yeah.
So, Vicky, you mentioned that when you started photography, I think it was in high school, that you hated the darkroom stuff because it was just work.
Right.
And that you did get over it, but is digital photography something that you really enjoyed because of this?
Well, that's a good question. It took me a long time to embrace digital photography, actually, because once I decided I'm going to do the work that it takes to learn photography inside and out and not just go take pictures, I really loved the process of working in the darkroom, especially. Everything from developing the film to enlarging the photos, it's completely different than digital. There are a lot of advantages to digital, of course. In some ways it's less expensive, but that's a whole conversation that would take all afternoon too, because computers and printers and things are expensive. But there's something, I like this word, organic, about being in the dark room with the chemicals and a very serene, quiet setting, usually by yourself. So it took me a while to, as a matter of fact, I kind of stopped taking pictures after a while because there was a little bit of a gap between being able to easily get film and the chemicals for darkroom and then wanting to go that take that leap into digital. A couple of years I didn't take photos. So it is different. I don't necessarily think that the process of making the image is that much different. I try not to do a lot of relying on post-processing. I mean, everybody does post-processing now, whether it's increasing contrast or whatever. But I try not to let the computer be the thing that's actually making the photograph. I want it to be as much from the perspective of what I saw on the camera as possible. So yeah, big difference, but once I embraced it, the technology is a good thing. It makes it more accessible.
Why is that you want to stay as close as possible to what you see in the camera and what you print? Because doing the post-production, it's just a tool.
It is just a tool, but there are different degrees of those tools. I would say, yes, a little bit of cropping, a little bit of increasing contrast, a little bit of increasing saturation. But now you can take your iPhone and push a button and get a completely different image out of the original photo, as to where the photo that you originally made isn't even recognizable anymore. So to me, it's a matter of degree, and I want to have more of the image coming from myself than an algorithm. I guess that's where the line is for me. Darkroom work, there's some changes you can do too. You can burn in, you can dodge, there's cropping, you can do double images, but not to the degree of completely changing what the original image looked like.
Next to you now, you have a black and white photograph, but the majority of the photos that you're showing are color. Is that also because the digital gives you easier opportunity to do that? Because color printing was hard? I know people who never printed their own color photograph.
Well, that's an interesting question. It's difficult to do your own color printing in non-digital, but it can be done. So I did both. I did slide film with color when I was doing
Is that because you're a lab technician and you're just ingrained being precise and weighing things and measuring things and timing? Do you think you had to step up because of that? That science?
I guess I don't understand your question.
Well, if you are not as precise as you should be in a dark room, with black and white you might get away with it, but with color it asks for more precision. And your background is being a lab technician and doing very precise, I assume.
Okay, I think I understand what you're saying now. Correct me if I'm wrong. Are you saying that with black and white and being in the dark room with the black and white, you have more control over what the image looks like? Usually in the past, with color images, you send them off to a lab. So yeah, that's definitely, in my opinion, you have more of the process. But now with digital, I don't think about that as much. I do have a bit of a romantic love for black and white photos. I think a lot of photographers that started in film do. But each image is different for whether I think it should be black and white. Sometimes when I go and make the photograph, I see that it's going to be black and white. It just has the qualities that work better, and photographers tend to start seeing things in black and white if they do black and white photos. So, but just depends on the photo. Sometimes I'll try to convert a color photo to black and white, and it just doesn't work for me.
What would you say are your challenges in doing this?
Abstracts in particular, or
Yeah. Well, the portrait photography gets this whole other thing of what to
Right.
do with that person and make them feel at ease. That doesn't play with the work you're showing here.
I'd say going back to, my process again, the challenges that I have are, not maybe being as prolific as I would want to be. Again, if I say I want to go out and make an abstract photo, it just doesn't happen that way. So I guess the way to overcome that is to just be out with my camera more, getting my mind maybe into the right kind of space where I would see an abstract in something. It really is a sort of a different mind space.
I mean, I'm just suddenly thinking, well, maybe you don't really want to approach this body of work like that, but rather have it more be serendipitous and have it be as a surprise come to you.
Well, right. So that is when I enjoy it the most. Where look at that thing. So I guess maybe time is a challenge. Getting out there more so that I have those opportunities. Because, like I said, it's just doesn't happen upon command. So.
Yeah. Carol, are you influenced by any artists?
I'm sure I'm influenced by a lot of artists, I would think.
Are you consciously aware of this is an artist I admire and I'd like to work like that? Or it's a subject matter that.
Yeah, I hope I don't do that. I think I probably did that when I was an art student, but no, I don't. No longer. Mm-mm.
Not influenced.
Well, I think I have been, but I wouldn't say today that, I want to do this like so-and-so does it. No, I want to do it like I do it. Right?
Do you get surprised by what other people do?
Oh, yeah, constantly. I think it's amazing. I think this show is amazing, for one thing. These are all these different approaches for basically the same thing, making an image. Oh, yeah, always.
What's your most satisfactory happening when you were making this body of work?
This body of work?
Yeah. And then we'll talk about the rest of it.
I guess maybe when it's finished, and when I looked at it and think, well, that's good, I like that. And then figuring out this method of framing.
Let's talk about that a little bit. So can you describe that framing and how you got to it?
A lot of serendipity. I really like the OSU surplus, whatever they call it, that store. And they have all this lab stuff that I'm clueless about what it's for. But they had these circles, which I found are called, evaporation trays or something like that. Still don't know what they do. But I already had the prints. And that was because of going up to the microbiology department and having a petri dish. And so I was already working in this size. And then I thought, that would look good. And so that's how it evolved. I mean, it's not very thought out. A lot of serendipity.
So you have concave or convex?
Mm-hmm.
I never know what's what. piece of glass that is practically the same size, or the same size
Yeah,
as your
I was
round
lucky.
image.
It did just
Attached
happen.
to the glass in front, sort of as emulating a lens.
Yes, except it doesn't really distort the print.
No, but, and that is something that I read into it. And that may not have been your,
I was glad that it didn't.
no, the emulating that it looks like a lens. Sort of, you know, giving you a
Kind of a sciencey look.
Yeah.
And then there was a challenge of how to affix this disc onto this glass. I went through all kinds of machinations about whether I would cut the glass, put it on there, put it on the inside, put it on the outside, what kind of glue. So there was a lot involved in that. It's a glass glue that dries clear. Yeah, see, that would have been the first, wasn't my first thought. Yeah, it was too easy. Got to make it harder. But I liked the finished product anyway. But I wanted it to be a unit.
Do you often think about presentation when you're making the work, or when you are at a certain point in the work that you think, well, now I have this piece of paper with an image on it, now what are we going to do?
Not usually, no. I did with this just because I wanted it to look kind of, I don't know.
Have you made non-traditional presentation methods before? I remember you made a piece about this, about a woman who got hit by a car when she was picking up her.
Yeah, I did, yeah. Yeah, so I guess that would be called non-traditional. That combined letterpress and woodcut. And then the woodcut had chincole, which is a piece that just is a fancy word that means paper on top of paper. Yeah, so I suppose for that particular application, I thought that event was so big, it needed more than just one thing. Yeah, so that was the letterpress is a long prose piece, and then there's the woodcut with it, and they go together as a unit. Mm-hmm.
Do you have a question, Nancy?
I was going to say the painted coat. Do you have a
I do have a painted coat. That's true. Yeah. It's linen. So I was painting on linen.
Oil on linen. Vicky, you're a straightforward photographer with a white mat and a black frame, right?
Say that again?
You present your work as most photographers do, very toned down.
Oh, you as far as the framing.
Yeah, you don't go crazy. Not that you went crazy. I didn't mean to imply that.
Yeah, photos that I have in my house, I have framed in my husband's handmade wood frames. But usually, I guess it's sort of tradition for photographers to stray away from ornate framing so that the focus is on the photograph. So I guess it's just sort of that tradition.
Yeah.
May I ask a question? It's a terrible question. You would never ask Picasso what brand of brush he uses or what brand of paint, but people think that you can go to photographers. I'm just curious, do you use large format or medium format or 35 for most of your work?
35, it's a DSLR camera that I have, so 35 millimeter equivalent. And when I did film, I haven't worked in large and medium format too much. I played around with a 8x10 view camera. But boy, that's really finessey equipment. My husband is also a camera collector, so I would like to explore some of the other medium format in particular because they make beautiful photographs.
Has the death of the camera store impacted you?
Well,
I mean, in the good old days, every small town had a camera store. Now the state is down to like one.
yeah. Well, there's still Portland, but in digital, there's not as much need. But I do remember when Oregon Camera went out of business, and I have a photograph of the store right as they were going out of business. So, yeah, it is sad, but that's progress for you, right?
Is there such progress in printing or painting that you know of, Carol?
Well, we happen to live in a town that has no art supply store, so there. So I pretty much have to go out of town for everything. But everything really only involves paper. I mean, I can't, there is no paper supply here. So it's either mail order or Portland. I'm happy for Portland, or mail order. And then the ink, same thing. I couldn't get, there's no source for ink, printing ink here. Is there? Does somebody know something that I don't know?
No, I think the hobby stores that we have sell some sketchbooks and some
yeah.
sheets of paper, but I don't know
But they're
what
not
kind
printing,
of paper.
not printing paper.
Yeah.
The little bookbinder store sells paper now.
Oh,
What's her
yes,
name?
yes,
Cyrano.
Cyrano.
She does have, and she will order it too.
And she
Yeah.
sells some inks too. No cameras, sorry. No, not for you. When you learned that you didn't know each other
No.
correctly, so how do you think your work speaks to each other?
I think it relates. I always trust your judgment on these things, that you pair artists together for shows. I think there is a commonality of looking at something with a different point of view. What do you think? See, I can ask questions.
Right. I agree. I think you did an excellent job of pairing us. And the first thing that struck me about Carol's, this body of work is how she called it Petri dish or planet, because a couple of my photos that are here have that same idea. One of them I called Inner Space. That's the one that with the spider in it, because absent that spider, I think it could look like outer space, with planets and nebula and things like that. So I thought it worked really well to put us together. Another one of mine is called Big Bang, because that's what it reminds me of. And it's not taken in space, believe me.
As artists, do you enjoy being put together with someone you haven't met before? Does it open up new doors for you, or it's just fun?
Yes.
It's two very different. Well, it's not very different media, actually. They both have technical aspects quite a bit.
I don't think I've ever had a situation where, most of the time I've been paired with other photographers. I don't think I've ever had a situation where I thought, that's just terrible that we were put together. I got curious about Carol's work and looked at her website, and it's actually making me think I should do some different types of art. That it would be really fun to explore different things. I don't know that I would be somebody who would draw or paint, formal type painting, but maybe I'll give a few things a try. It's really interesting to see what other people do to express their artistic selves. Is it still for me?
So if nobody else in the audience has another question, I'm going to go to my final question that I hope I told you before, but I gave you a heads up, but I'm not sure. If money and space was not something you would have to think about, what artwork would you like to own?
Okay, so you're asking me first. Oh boy, in the whole and complete world of art. Well, I like a variety of types of art. I really like textiles. I really enjoy textiles. For me, there are way too many photographs in my house. So, and I love paintings. I enjoy sculptures. So I'd probably have a mix of those things.
I think it's interesting that you mentioned textiles as the first thing, because photographs are, they're flat.
Mm-hmm.
They don't have a texture.
Mm-hmm.
And textiles, the first thing is texture.
Right.
That sets it apart from any other. So that's interesting. Carol, do you have any thoughts?
Are you going to supply it? Sure. I think any drawing from Rembrandt would be good.
Okay.
Or maybe a print from Ketakolwitz.
All right.
Those would be my choices.
Great. Well, then I'd like to close. Does everybody know Kate Kolwitz, 1930s? 1930s, Kate Kolwitz?
Katie Collins.
Yeah?
Yeah. Pre-World War II.
Yes.
Yeah, pre-World War II mostly, right? And Rembrandt, yeah, sure.
Rembrandt.
Well, I'd like to thank you for being here. I know it's not necessarily your most favorite thing. It's very informative for us. We like to hear what you're thinking when you're making this art. I hope you both keep doing it for a long time. And thank you.
Thank you too.